It began, as most storms do, with something small, a bill that didn't make sense. Richard Holloway had been a loyal customer of Everbright Telecom for nearly a decade. He paid his monthly charges without much thought, accepted the occasional service outage, and endured the endless waits on customer support calls like everyone else. But then came the mysterious premium service fee. It wasn't large, just a few dollars tacked onto his bill, but it was new, unexplained, and stubbornly recurring. At first, Richard assumed it was a mistake. He spent an hour navigating the labyrinthine phone menu until a representative assured him it would be removed. It wasn't. The following month, the charge doubled. By the third, it had ballooned into something he could no longer ignore. Each time he called, he was transferred, placed on hold, dismissed, or told that the system couldn't locate his file. What unsettled him most wasn't the money itself, but the condescension, the quiet insinuation that he, the customer, was either mistaken or too insignificant to matter. Richard worked in IT. He wasn't flashy, nor was he particularly confrontational, but he had patience, technical skill, and a growing fire in his chest. After 6 months of fruitless arguments with Everbright, he began documenting everything, every charge, every call, every transcript from their online chat support. He stored them in neatly labeled folders, with timestamps and screenshots, until he had a digital mountain of evidence showing not only his own mistreatment, but also a pattern that hinted at something larger. The idea came to him one night while he sat at his desk, staring at his growing archive. If Everbright wouldn't listen to him, maybe the world would. He began drafting a post for a consumer forum, outlining his experience in painstaking detail. But words alone weren't enough. He wanted impact. So he designed a video. Using his technical skills, he created clean, concise graphics that showed the creeping charges, the evasive responses, the corporate indifference. He cut in audio clips of the endless hold music, spliced together fragments of dismissive replies from representatives, and overlaid it all with his calm, steady narration. The video was damning, not angry, not ranting, but meticulous, factual, impossible to dismiss. He uploaded it late one evening under the title, Everbright Telecom's Hidden Fees, A Customer's Story. He thought, at best, it might get a few sympathetic nods from fellow frustrated customers. By morning, it had exploded. Reddit threads picked it up. Tech blogs dissected his evidence. YouTubers reacted to his calm, precise delivery. Within a week, his video had millions of views, and Everbright Telecom found itself on the defensive. The company issued a statement calling the charges an isolated error. But Richard's video had already sparked a flood of responses from other customers, each with their own stories, their own bills marked by the same shadowy fees. Hashtags trended, class action lawyers reached out, and news outlets invited him for interviews. What had begun as one man's irritation became a movement. Richard didn't rage when he spoke on camera. He didn't curse or shout. He sat in his modest living room, in front of his computer, and spoke plainly. His composure was his weapon, his evidence his ammunition. He came across not as a bitter complainer, but as the everyman, calm, diligent, and wronged in a way that resonated with millions. Everbright tried to silence him. They sent a cease and desist letter claiming defamation. Richard posted the letter online, calmly dismantling its accusations line by line. The internet rallied harder. The story spread internationally, translated into multiple languages, shared by consumer advocates across continents. Politicians began calling for inquiries into telecom billing practices. Shareholders grew nervous, and Everbright's stock slipped. The final stroke of Richard's revenge came not from him but from the tide he had unleashed. A law firm filed a massive class action lawsuit, citing his evidence as the foundation. Regulators opened an investigation, and in a move that shocked even him, Everbright's CEO resigned under pressure. Months later, Richard's life had changed in ways he couldn't have imagined. He wasn't rich, nor did he want to be. He still lived in the same house, still worked his IT job. But now he was a symbol, proof that one customer, armed with patience, facts, and a little creativity, could bring a corporation to its knees. And when he received his next bill from Everbright, Stripped of all hidden fees, accompanied by an apology letter, he smiled for the first time in months. It wasn't the money he had wanted. It was acknowledgement. It was justice. And most of all, it was revenge served cold, not in anger, but in the quiet, devastating way only the truth can deliver. Richard Holloway had never thought of himself as a man built for war. He was quiet, methodical, the type of person who paid his bills early and double-checked his receipts. But wars don't always begin with guns or fists. Sometimes they start with a line item at the bottom of a bill. It was March when he first noticed the charge. Premium access service, $6.99. He stared at it for a long time. He hadn't signed up for anything new, hadn't agreed to a service plan, hadn't clicked some obscure box buried in terms and conditions. He called customer service, endured the endless loop of synthetic voices and flute-heavy hold music, and eventually reached a representative who sounded bored before Richard even spoke. The man on the line promised it would be corrected immediately. The next month, the fee appeared again. And this time, it was $13.99. Something inside Richard hardened. The calls multiplied. Each one was a copy of the last. The wait, the scripted apologies, the hollow reassurances. He asked for documentation, for records, for proof of what he had supposedly signed. He was promised follow-up emails that never came. His requests for escalation were drowned in system errors and mysteriously dropped calls. He began to realize the truth. He wasn't talking to human beings anymore. He was talking to a wall of policy, a system designed not to resolve but to exhaust. And Richard Holloway did not exhaust easily. He began his own campaign. Every phone call was recorded. Every email was saved. Every chat log was copied. He built a dossier the way a detective builds a case file. In the evenings, he researched Everbright Telecom, their executives, their shareholders, their profit statements. He read articles about hidden fees, customer exploitation, and class action lawsuits in other states. The more he dug, the clearer the picture became. This wasn't an error. It was a business model. Weeks turned into months, and Richard's quiet anger evolved into strategy. He set traps. When a representative told him a fee had been removed, he confirmed it in writing, knowing it would reappear. When he was promised a call back, he documented the silence. He baited them into contradictions, gathered names, and captured proof of policies that directly contradicted consumer protection laws. By the 6th month, his archive was a weapon sharp enough to cut steel. The video he created wasn't a rant. It was a presentation. Stark white slides with bold black text. Charts showing the steady rise of his mystery fees. Clips of hold music that looped endlessly into silence. Audio of representatives contradicting one another. His narration was calm, deliberate, as if he were testifying in court. And in a way, he was. When he uploaded it, he didn't send it to friends or family. He seeded it into forums for consumer rights, into subreddits dedicated to scams, into obscure blogs read by watchdogs and activists. Within 12 hours, it was spreading like wildfire. People recognized themselves in his story. Comments flooded in from strangers with identical charges on their bills. Some shared screenshots, others described nearly identical conversations with Everbright staff. By the end of the week, it wasn't just Richard's fight anymore, it was thousands. Everbright tried damage control. They called it an isolated issue. They claimed his video was misleading. But Richard was ready. He released Part 2, 40 minutes of evidence gathered from other customers who had reached out to him, woven together into a damning indictment of a systemic scam. Then came the cease and desist letter, a corporate sledgehammer meant to silence him. Richard read it, smiled faintly, and uploaded it online with annotations pointing out every falsehood, every bluff. The internet devoured it. What had been a consumer complaint became a story of David versus Goliath. News outlets covered him. Late-night hosts joked about the company's arrogance. Politicians, sniffing an opportunity, vowed to hold telecom giants accountable. Lawsuits piled up like storm clouds, and Everbright's stock began to slip. For Richard, the most satisfying moment came quietly. It was an evening like any other, his cat purring at the foot of the couch, when he checked his email and found a message from a mid-level manager at Everbright. It was short, almost pleading. "We know you've made your point. Could we please talk privately about a resolution?" Richard didn't reply. Instead, he screenshotted it, redacted the name, and added it to part 3 of his video series, Behind the Curtain. By then, his channel had 1 million subscribers. He hadn't asked for them, hadn't set out to become an internet figure, but there they were. Strangers who cheered him not because he was charismatic, but because he was relentless, ordinary, and unafraid to shine light where corporations thrived in shadows. Everbright eventually settled the lawsuits, refunded millions in hidden fees, and replaced its CEO. None of it mattered much to Richard's personal life. He still drove the same used car, still fixed his neighbors' computers on weekends, still carried his groceries home 1 bag at a time. But when the next bill came, it was clean. No extra charges. No premium services. Just the basics, as it should have been all along. Richard held the paper in his hand, studied it, and felt the faintest curve of a smile. Revenge hadn't come in the form of shouting, threats, or fire. It had come in facts, in patience, in the quiet devastation of a system forced to kneel under the weight of truth. And that, he thought, was the sweetest victory of all.